And I'm not willing to take as many risks as I took 1 year ago. Bro, I blew out my back getting out of bed. That's the struggle with 41. Nothing works. This is just not working the same.
Before we started rolling, I felt like you wanted to unpack some stuff.
Just what we've been talking about on our leadership teams. And it's this idea of New Year's resolutions, right? And people just wait way too long. Like you can't make a New Year's resolution the day before New Year's Eve. Like big changes, small changes require a lot of intentionality, planning, commitment. And so what we're talking about basically is, you know, if you've had a good year, and, you know, many people have, or a successful year, and we don't have to get into the specifics of what that means, but if you've had an okay year and you're happy with that, you're rolling the dice going into next year, assuming you'll have the same year with the same level of, you're rolling the dice going into 25, thinking that you'll have the same level of success, because a lot of things have to happen, right? A lot of things have to fall in place. So if you're just going to stay the same and nothing is going to change, you may or may not have the same year. You're probably not going to have a better year. It could be, you know, objectively, tangibly worse, because there's a lot of things that are out of our hands. But if you want a better year, something has to change. That's basically what we've been, you know, living in. And for something to change, there needs to be more or different output. Like things have to change. You have to better yourself. You have to make commitments to yourself and know what those things are. Otherwise, don't expect a better year. Yeah. Now, if you haven't had a good year, which is the majority of us, right, are not satisfied one way or another with some elements of how the year could have been, well, then a lot of things have to change. And that can be overwhelming, right? But small changes have seismic effects. Yeah. Small changes, but even those small changes need to be intentional. Like you're not just going to wake up and start going to the gym every day if you haven't been doing that. If you haven't been planning, if you don't plan your day around doing that, you're not just going to have a turn in your relationships, in your marriage, unless you know exactly the things that need to change. So we've been talking a lot about it. You know, at a 400 person company, it's really easy to talk about it at the top. Yeah. It's different to execute all the way down to the bottom. But it's something I like my directors, my vice presidents to understand that if you're satisfied, good. I mean, it may have been a great year for you. I think we always want better. And so if you're going to even come close to getting a little bit better, the output has to be different. Yeah. More. Yeah. Has to change. But for the majority of people who are not satisfied, they're wanting to change a lot. Yeah. And that takes a lot of intentionality.
A couple of things come to mind. One is, in your personal experience, what's more challenging, to improve a good year or turn around a bad year?
To improve a good year.
Tell me why.
Really, really difficult. Because you have this awareness of accomplishment. Yeah. And a lot of times it's real, you know, and beating good numbers, exceeding good performance is really hard because the margins are much smaller, right? So like, you know, I'm just using an example. Usain Bolt. Mm-hmm. Like the guy's never going to shave a second off of his 100. He's already at that point, he was the fastest human on the planet by very small margins, but the best. And he continued to improve a lot. But the difference between a world record 100 meter, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's like 9.49 and then 9.48, 9.476. Like the margins get really, really smaller. It's the same way in life and in business. If you've had a good year, you're generally comfortable and walking around with accomplishment, which you deserve, and you have to recognize that. But it's like that surfer mentality that we talked about. Yeah. You ride the wave and then it's over. And then it's on to catching the next wave and or navigating the bad waves. Yeah. Changing a bad year is really easy. One small change can completely alter the trajectory of your life. In a bad year.
Yeah. So roughly 400-person company. How do you go about, so we're talking about, New Year's resolutions, leadership goals and tactics. How do you think about, or how do you apply like individual paths and like the collective like goal? Are they separate? Do you handle them like as one, or how does that look for you?
Yeah, each department has their own goals, but like the mission and the vision is generally the same.
Yeah.
Right. So we're at a very, very high level. We are looking to accomplish massive quality of life improvements for our customers.
Yep.
In the most general form of what that mission is, right? Our core values are: we love our customers, we listen to our customers, we choose hard cases, et cetera, et cetera. We have 5 core values, but then you have to assess the year based on how well we did at each one of those.
Mm. So those are like the core values, right? I'm interested, like, how do you measure those?
It's easy and it's hard at the same time.
Yeah.
Something like core value number 1, which has always been, we love our customers. Mm-hmm. You assess that on a daily basis, literally by asking each agent, each customer service rep, like, could you have loved someone a little bit more? I hear phone calls all the time as I'm walking around, and I hear wonderful examples of one of our employees showing deep love and empathy towards a customer's situation. And even then the question is like, how could you have loved them a little bit more? What introspective questions, what harder questions could you have asked them to find out like really what they're going with, connect with them on that level, and then marry that to the product that we provide.
Yeah.
So I would say those are generally easier to assess. And then the other ones, we choose hard. No negativity. Those sometimes are a little bit more nebulous, but not inaccessible.
Yeah.
That's where it gets to be a department-wide thing. Sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what comes to mind for me is like being in proximity to that usually has a more potent effect than like the words on the wall. So like if you see someone doing it,
sure.
If you hear it, I've seen that through the companies you've run. It's like, dude, it comes from the leaders, right? If one person's like demonstrating that and living it, it's like there's almost like an embodied true north of like, okay, this is kind of like what it should look like.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of leadership styles, and there's a lot of people that are successful with multiple leadership styles. As you know, and as you've seen, I'm very hands-on. Yep. I'm literally in the pits. That's just how I've always been, because I started at the bottom as well. And so it's always been important to me to maintain a level of connection to what's actually happening with the people on the ground. Not a lot of CEOs lead like that, and that's fine. I mean, that's totally fine. It's all about the mission and vision and the success and the directive of that. There's a lot of organizations that don't require a lot of people-to-people management. I don't envy those because it's really difficult. I think to quantify, I could speak to a person and assess why they're having a hard time or what their problems are. I can't speak to a machine.
Yeah.
It's very, it's different. But going back to that, I think it's like anything else. Like you're always taking stock of your day, or you should be. You should be just going down the list and seeing like, how was my day? What were the good interactions? What were the bad interactions? How could I have made the good ones better? How could I have made the bad ones better? What was my role in miscommunication, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. You mentioned like being in the trenches and staying connected. It reminded me of there's something called the connection principle in Jiu-Jitsu. Of you gotta essentially, it's like a kinesthetic awareness of like feeling the guy's energy or the girl's energy, staying connected. So your game can actually transpire through the connection. Because if you don't manage the distance, then it's done. So I find that interesting. Like grappling literally translates to like how you manage relationships interpersonally, professionally.
It's very interesting that you bring up that example. I know you're active with Jiu-Jitsu. I've only seen it.
Yeah.
Watching a Jiu-Jitsu match is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Just watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll start sweating
Yeah.
watching the two of them, the participants,
Mm-hmm.
go at it because there's very little decisive contact, right? There's not like, it's not the type of sport where like you knock someone out, punch
There's
someone.
no striking. No.
Yeah. So it's all about who can wear the other one out. And it takes a tremendous amount of patience, energy. And so if you've ever watched and you've participated in many of them, it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're on the ground and it's exhausting just waiting for the other person to tap out.
Yeah.
And that's life. Isn't that life?
Isn't more interesting too? It is life. I agree. But there is no match. There is no practice without connection.
Yeah.
Which is like the paradox of the whole game, right? Is like we can't practice unless we connect.
You got to be in it.
You got to
like there's no way. It's almost as if it's the exhaustion is unavoidable.
Mm-hmm.
You have to.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Who said the quote? I think was it Roosevelt? Sorry if I'm butchering this, but it's like the quote of like, oh man, this is gonna be bad.
The man in the ring.
Yes, the man in the arena.
It is Theodore Roosevelt. You're right.
Roosevelt.
Let me read it. This will be good for some B-roll. and this is jiu-jitsu and life.
And life. And
relationships,
business, leadership.
Yeah, all of it. The man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the ring, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Jiu-Jitsu. I don't do jiu-jitsu, but I have a lot of respect for people who do it because, like I said, I've seen them, bro, like a match for 14 minutes struggling with every fiber of your being.
Yeah.
To not be overcome by the other person. It's craziness to me.
Yeah, it's I was actually very scared to start. Like no one really knew, but like it was one of those like secret decisions of like, I am so scared to do this.
Why'd you decide to start? How old were you when you started, and why did you decide to start? This is recent.
Yeah. Partially was I wanted to get Phoenix into it, my son, get into a martial art, and part of that decision process was I wanted him to get into something that was like live, because there's some martial arts where you can practice.
Mm-hmm.
No disrespect to him, but it's all like theory, and you're hitting a bag.
It's not engaging.
With jiu-jitsu and judo, like most grappling-based martial arts, you can practice at live intensities, which to me and a lot of the practitioners, it's useful now because over time, if you do get an altercation in the street, you have some tools. Jocko, he's a kind of an influencer now, but he does jiu-jitsu, and he once said, if we get into it and we have distance, and you want to like slug me or hit me, I'm going to run away. But if you grab me, it's a different story. And that stuck with me. It was like that kind of confidence of like, I'm going to manage this. If it does get into something, I can de-escalate it. But if I have to, I can defend myself. So Phoenix was first, and then I was like, man, there was a couple of moments when I was younger. Got into some altercations. Actually, this is crazy. Bringing some memories up. 3 dudes cornered me in high school. I played basketball. And I was the only non-black player on the team. And these dudes came up to me saying, "Who do you think you are?" And essentially, they were like, you think you're some black dude? And they jumped me. I did the best I could, took some hits. But the feeling of not being equipped stuck with me. And maybe subconsciously, I was like, I need to like redeem that a little bit. And I may never, hopefully, get into anything.
I mean, I
but just
hope
knowing I can defend myself is probably a driver.
Sure.
Yeah. And in the mental health part too, like it's people talk about it, but I've noticed like going in there and having a lot of apprehension of like, man, I know this dude Derek. He's a big dude. I'm gonna have to spar him. He's gonna like sit on top of me for the whole round. Like I get nervous still going in, but continually like facing that and going in, and an hour later I'm like, man, I'm in the arena.
What I love about that is it's a very real fear.
Yeah.
And overcoming of that fear every time you get in.
Yeah.
Regardless of what ends up happening. Right. It's like, because all the smart ones say do something that scares you as often as you can.
Yeah.
Right? Like do something that scares you as often as you can. It could be something as small as asking a girl for her number. It could be something as small as reaching out, trying to make a new friend. I'm using, simple examples, but just a lot of things scare us and we generally shy away from them as much as we can because they scare us.
Yeah.
What I love about that is that you're doing something scary a lot.
Yeah. I think the frequency is important too.
It's rewiring this when you come across something, especially as we get older. And I'm not willing to take as many risks as I took 1 year ago.
Sure.
Bro, I blew out my back getting out of bed. This should be a short clip.
Yeah.
Like that's the struggle with this 41. When nothing works, this is just not working the same.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. And I'm just swinging my feet off the bed and boom, like not in the gym.
Yep.
You've seen me, I could run 12 miles, not competitively, but I can go 12 miles and be just fine.
Right.
Heart's okay, but I can't step out of bed in the morning and not completely wreck my lower back. And so I'm willing to take significantly less risks.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with fear.
Yeah.
It's just being more careful.
Yeah.
So when you're constantly doing something like that, where you're activating that part of your brain where you're like, I don't want to do this. I'm scared, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's the frequency of doing that over and over and over again, the repetition.
Yeah.
It de-fears your life.
Absolutely. And you frame that really, really good. I like that. And in light of what we've talked over the course of these episodes, midlife with like, we came together at a time where we were kind of, dealing with some marriage stuff and kind of rebuilding that aspect of our lives. I think jiu-jitsu has been an aspect for me to, number one, enter a space where I can productively channel a lot of things. Anger, guilt, maybe a little bit of rage. In a place where it's accepted in like a controlled fashion, obviously, but and then number two, having a space. I don't want to say it's my own, but it's it's a thing that I do for me with no relation to monetary gain or relational like agendas. It's like just something I'm gonna do it two or three times a week for an hour, and my phone's away, and I can feel my brain put down all the shit that I may or may not want or have to deal with at that time. So those are a couple of things that like stick out to me. Is like why have I continued, and what am I getting out of it? And obviously, like learning the art is part of it, but there's so much more for me personally, and I think a lot of other people can have their own versions of that too. Yeah. Have you heard the raft analogy? If not, you're going to.
No, but you're going to tell me.
So there's an old like Zen parable. This guy came to a river, and then he's like, I can't swim across this river because it's too deep, too dangerous, whatever. So he built his own raft. Took him a couple days. Set across, got to the other side, and then realized like the raft did its job. I no longer need to carry it or use it. He left it behind and went on. And I was like, man, there's so many ways I can take this or we can take this. But how I'm going to frame it is, what are some rafts for you historically that you've gotten some real value out of, used them for a period of time, and either continue to use them or you've left them behind? In any domain, professional, personal, physical, emotional.
Is it bad that the only rafts that come to mind are bad ones?
No. Take it where you want.
I think a lot of guys our age, and I have to throw it out there. I hope anyone who's listening who understands what the intended audience is, because I've already gotten questions. To anyone in their late teens, 20s, we're just sharing stories about the mistakes we've made, how we could have done them better, but more importantly, what we've learned and how that growth has helped us now.
Yeah.
It's not going to be relevant to everybody.
Sure.
I think it's probably going to be relevant to a lot of people. I think a lot of guys use alcohol as a raft.
Tell me more.
Until they realize that it's a sinking raft at best. And it only carries you upriver. And there's a lot of crutches that are rafts that we think are like, we may use our relationship as a crutch.
Yeah.
Please throw out any other ideas if you have them. I'm coming at a loss, but it's because we don't have the resources to cross that river.
Yeah.
Or we're not looking at a proper raft the right way.
Yeah.
You know? As I get older, like the unsinkable raft is faith. And we really do gloss over it, especially during hard times, because during hard times, we're always on our knees. And we usually dump that raft the minute things are better. Yeah. And we don't work on that raft. We don't improve it. We don't make it more waterproof. We don't optimize it.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I think that's a raft that I wish I had used more often. To try to guide and center my self-assessment.
Yeah.
Not, God, here's a bad situation. Where are you? Make it better. But rather trying to find God in that bad situation that's trying to make me better.
Yeah.
I think that's actually about as eye-opening as I can make it. And it was for me. Because because so many times in my youth, I used faith as a crutch to seek God only in bad times, but not to seek him, but to basically seek a solution,
Sure.
a remedy,
Yeah.
a fix, quick or not, mostly quick.
Mhm.
You know, as I get a little bit older, it's like, nah, man, this is gonna take some time. This is gonna take a little bit of pain, and that's okay. But seeing the situation as God trying to make you better, seeing closed doors as not no direction, but misdirection.
Yeah.
Not misdirection, redirection. I think that stuff is really important.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made sense.
No. I'm hearing alcohol as a raft that you used while it was beneficial. I don't know if that's the right word, but you've left that behind. And then the one that you're still, the raft that you're quote unquote still utilizing is faith.
Yeah, and we come up with images. Again, I'm just speaking to this parable, but I basically see a raft as a crutch, as an aid, something to help you temporarily.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
It could be permanent. And there's so many things that we use that are not really beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, there are a couple of things that came to mind. I think a more recent one is I think I, in some ways, just shifted my approval-seeking behavior towards sex. And I haven't let go of that raft completely, but I know I'm like working with it. I think in light of like working on my marriage, I think it's a little bit of part like finding, it's like the ego wanting to stay alive a little bit, of like getting validation physically. And that's a trait I've had historically, like with my dad. I think a little bit seeped into my marriage and finding like external validation through physical sex with my wife. So I'm like, that's an interesting layer to look at and confront.
Yeah. As I'm hearing you talking, I'm thinking of just performance in general.
Yeah.
We just use accomplishments and climbing to the top and getting, accumulating, as a raft, but there's something else much deeper going on inside.
For sure.
And again, historically, you know, performance, money, power, like just all the regular ones, but accomplishment is a raft.
Yeah.
Because it's like, why am I trying to accomplish this? For the end result or for some sort of internal gratification, internal affirmation?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's tough.
And I've wondered too, like, I know it's probably a net gain to be aware of it and to kind of like work with it, but it's harder to know that that's potentially going on versus just like blindly, like just letting the rails fall off type of thing.
I would say to guys, because I don't know who's watching and who needs to hear it. But if you're going through it and things seem off, I love you and I feel for you. Like, I don't care who you are. I really do. I have that empathy for someone who just doesn't understand why they're doing the things they're doing. Good, bad, or indifferent. But
let me pin that too. I think there's something to know of like, if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, don't add more shame on that.
I don't think a lot of times they know that there is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of times they understand. I know I didn't. I was just building, going, go as fast as I possibly could. All for generally worthy reasons.
Yeah.
but deep down inside, I just wanted to be affirmed
Yeah.
and told, I'm proud of you. I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, you're enough.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of element. I mean, people want to accomplish things to accomplish great things. That in and of itself is great. I think a lot of the times we're misdirected into why we're doing it, though. Yeah. And that's the danger when you finally get there and it didn't fix anything.
Yeah.
You made all the money in the world. You built the companies. You sold the companies. And I hear this time and time again from mentors and people I talk to that the accomplishment that they thought was going to fix everything didn't. It really just exposed how lonely and naked and scared they actually felt. Yeah. It actually made things worse.
Yeah.
I know that's happened in my life. And it's interesting too, at a very young age, I made a ton of money and I learned that. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, this doesn't feel that great.
Yeah. And so you keep referencing, people who are watching or listening, largely younger, right? Than 40 or something.
I don't know. I've just gotten some comments.
Yeah. No, this is good. I think this is midlife strong, right?
In my mind, I'm like, look, you take from it what you can, but I'm addressing we're addressing like 35 to 55.
Yeah. Where I was going with that was, I think it's one thing if you're 25, 30, even 35, and you've got these ambitions and intentions to do things. Love it. Great. I think that's healthy. But when you read like Forbes or whatever, like the mainstream books and articles of like, yeah, the millionaire did this, and then at like 71, he was like, man, it wasn't worth it. That whole narrative, to read that is different than like getting it from like a mentor or someone close to you or someone close to home. It's like, wow, it's actually real. Like,
and we've both heard that from those people.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, if you one or two mentors, you don't have to drop names or anything, but like, you're getting that firsthand.
Yeah, and you don't when you're 18 or not as much.
Sure.
Very few 18, 19, 20-year-olds are hanging out with, talking to, asking questions of 60-year-olds.
Sure.
Maybe 40-year-olds. Generally, I don't know. I hope they are. But most of the people they're talking to are their peers and social media.
Yeah. And what's that narrative feeding?
The narrative is, go, just go get what you want. And I would agree with that. Yeah. I still agree with that. I still agree with, you got to take risks. You got to make moves. You got to put yourself out there. But I think at this age, we're finding a more balanced approach. And that balanced approach is, we have both been told by successful people. I have a handful and a half high net worth individuals like, yo, don't burn the body. Heart attack's not worth it. Yo, don't burn the marriage. Hey, you're burning your kids. Yeah. Don't do that. I've yet to hear, and again, I'm talking about a very specific group of people, 60s, very successful, multiple figure million net worths, one very close to $1 billion with a B. When they talk to me openly, they're not like, yeah, I wish I would have worked even longer days. I've never heard that. They haven't said it.
Yeah.
So you see all this social media, and it's like, shut up, wake up at 3 a.m. And it's like, oh, okay. I mean, yes. If you're 20, 25, 30, young, no kids, you got a lot of time to get a lot of amazing stuff done. Yeah. Be wise with your time. Your time is your greatest asset. You don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. and go to bed at 2 a.m. Like, what?
Yeah.
If now you have a family, who are you directing your time toward?
Sure.
Because taking into consideration everything that these wise people who are better than me and who have accomplished more than me have told me, I can gather that even later, So like they're in their, I don't know anyone in their 70s or 80s that has told me this, just people in their late 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
But when they get to that 70, 80, I don't think the prescription will reverse.
Sure.
I think if anything, it'll be even more.
Yeah.
Man, I really wish I spent more time with my kids. Man, I really, really wished I poured more love into my wife and into my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on your deathbed, I don't think you're going to be missing the company.
Sure.
I don't think you're going to be missing, I think you're going to be missing the people who love you, that you love. I think.
Yeah.
And so that puts it all into like a big balance perspective.
Yeah.
Which is you have a very limited amount of time and bandwidth in the day. You got to focus on yourself first and foremost, not accomplishment, but development, self-mastery, mastery of your thoughts, your intentions, your ambitions. You peel back that onion. Why do you have the ambitions you have? If it's for the sake of impressing other people or getting validation, you're going to get there. You're going to accomplish this incredible thing. And you're going to find yourself very empty.
A really practical model in this regard I've heard is from Arthur Brooks.
You love that guy.
Yeah, he's a social scientist, also a devout Catholic. So he kind of blends tradition with the science, which is really cool. But he says, you need intentions. Don't let them become attachments. So it's like, okay, what season are you in? I'm 24, no kids, single. Your intention is to develop professionally, whatever that looks for you. I think he would frame it as like, those are good intentions. Just be mindful that they don't become like cravings or attachments.
But that's the thing. That's what they end up becoming.
Yeah.
Right? So however well-intentioned our intentions were, I would even dare say they're not attachments. They're chains.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have the key to unlock those chains and throw those shackles off, and we refuse to. And sometimes the lines even blur.
Yeah.
That chain becomes an identity. Right?
Yep.
I mean, what do we both experience firsthand, not knowing why we're doing what we're doing anymore. And the work has become our sole purpose to the detriment of personal relationships, to the detriment of our health.
Yeah, I think when they go unchecked for too long, unchecked intentions can kind of present some sticky situations.
And again, it's hard. We talk about this a lot. You know, these kids, these young kids in here, they've only grown up with a life of social media. And they've only grown up with a life of, I feel, comparison. And you know, the quote I love, comparison is the thief of joy. And if all you're doing all day is seeing a microcosm of someone else's life times now 1,000.
Yeah. It's like a fire hose of comparison all day.
And it seems so much better than what you have. Yeah, you're walking around, whether you know it or not, really unhappy.
Yeah.
Very unhappy. And not knowing why you're doing what you're doing. It now sometimes has become this mutated version of your intentions. And now your intention is just to keep up with everyone else.
Yeah.
To keep up with a fallacy of everyone else.
It's almost, it sounds like, man, it's kind of a tragic romance, but like you kind of build a life that you eventually want to get away from. Like you build whatever it is for you based off unchecked intentions, and you get to the point, it's like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing? It's a good segue because there's some words that stuck out, like affirming yourself, and then we're talking about like, you know, purpose and all that stuff. So Dr. Zinzer, he's the clinical director at West Point, I think still. He's a sports psychologist. He has some really good tools. on the stuff we're talking about. One of them is called the IPS. So it's immediate progress system. So I'll just frame it. Let's, for instance, maybe I'm back in college playing basketball and we're on the line. We're doing, let's say, jump shots from corner 3. Everyone shoots 10. I'm doing the drill. Shots 7, 8, and 9 are money. Nothing but net. And then we go on to the next drill. The IPS says after you finish a drill, whether it's in sport or in business or relationship, filter the positive reps before you do the next thing. So for me, it's like, man, I really 7, 8, 9, money. And then you go to the next drill. And okay, now we're doing inside out crossovers to reverse layup. Reps 4 and 5 were just so smooth. Unconscious execution. I did really good on that. And you go to the next thing. Boom. And so there's all kinds of research on going throughout your day like this of, one, your biology changes. If you can have the wherewithal to like basically affirm yourself in the things you've done well already.
That day.
Like in the moment.
Real time. We're talking about real time. Wow.
So let's say sales calls, right? I took 20 calls between 9 and 12. Calls 11, 12, and 13. I crushed it. Followed the script. I actually got 2 deals out of it. And then you take another call. So biologically, it's like cortisol levels go down, heart rate lowers, blood pressure's improved. On the psychological side, you're like basically affirming yourself on things that you've done well. And this goes to like the negativity bias, right? It's like 5 to 1. We just see everything negative. I just thought it was like a really like practical tool on like examining yourself in a way that drives forward productive like mindset and action.
I love everything about that because you're focusing more on the positive.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like we said, like real time, right? Like it's one thing to examine your whole day, and that could be a lot for a lot of people because it's just like a lot going on.
Sure.
But to on the fly as it's happening,
yeah,
I think it's important. I really do for anyone to understand what they're doing well and to tell themselves, more importantly than anything, hey, great job. I did really good at this thing. And be as specific as possible. Yeah. Going back to the surfer mentality again, not to stay on the wave too high, not to crash too low, but I think it's really important that we affirm ourselves.
Yeah.
Because you have a huge problem in society where not enough people are getting enough affirmation in general.
Sure. You gotta crown yourself a little bit. Just
a little bit. And men, specifically men, I think, again, in general, society is really good at telling men what they're bad at.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good men out there, good at a lot of things, and no one's telling them. Same goes for women, absolutely. But again, my focus here is on the guys like me and you who weren't told that at a young age. And so it became almost routine to not hear how good you're doing at something.
Yeah.
And we take that, we carry it into our marriages, we carry it into our relationships with our kids. We're kind of basically doing the same thing. Yeah. Our antennas go up when something is wrong, when someone's doing something bad. Those antennas are not up when we're doing things really well, mundane things, everyday things really well.
I think, yeah, for sure. I think the value in that little tool is also framed with the question of, if you get down to it, like what is the story or narrative that you're constantly running on with yourself? And I mean, you can go a million directions with that, but I think this is a way for you and I and everyone else. It's like, if it is a conditioned story of like, I'm not good enough, or I always mess up, or whatever that version is, finding things that you're currently or have done well is almost like a pattern interruption to that story of like, I'm used to like almost like nurturing that like self-deprecating story. Yeah. And this is a way to actually like in real time feel like
you're breaking it.
You're breaking it.
And we both have experienced this. I think that's generally the narrative with a lot of people in general.
Yeah.
Guys, girls. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy enough. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough education. I don't have enough know-how. When the simple fact of the matter is, if you just stop and take stock, there's a lot that you're doing really well.
Yeah.
Just working a mundane, very difficult 9-to-5 job every day with confidence and grace and white knuckling it when it's not easy, you're doing that really well. Yeah. And I'm not saying to reward mediocrity. No, I'm just saying to recognize the battles that you're winning every day. It really is very important. I think if we did that more often, if we broke our own internal cycles, we can help break the cycles of our kids, our wives, our friends, our neighbors every day. And so it ends up becoming literally like a day of affirmation and gratitude.
It's like mental deposits, man. It's like reps.
Yeah. And affirming that stuff gives you a lot to be grateful for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds almost a little bit trite, when you say it, but if you kind of think about it, there's a lot of people, fitness is like a thing now. If you want to build muscle or get stronger, you got to put reps in. So working with and, dare I say, changing your mental story about yourself.
Takes a lot of reps.
It takes reps.
Yeah.
And that's going to look different for everyone, but
time and reps.
Time and reps.
Just like the body.
Time under tension. And I like it because of what you said too. You're already doing a lot of good. It's not like a heavy lift in regards to I have to like take on another project or get into a relationship. Like right now, in this moment, in this month,
you're doing it.
You're already doing it. You just have to like let that sink in, find it, and let your like soul and nervous system and brain feel it to like break that pattern. It's a lot of reps, a lot of work, but man, what's the alternative? Like letting that narrative run? I don't know. I think you'll like this one. So in professional jugglers, when they teach like lay people how to juggle, the first order of business is don't think about catching. Your job is to learn how to throw. And so they basically say once you like learn the fundamentals of where the ball needs to be thrown, the cadence, the intensity, the speed, the catch becomes a byproduct of a good throw. But most people come into it and they're like this and they want to like just chase the catch.
You're right. I really do love this one. Yeah, you picked that one.
And so I want to get your just open question on like, let's use that as context, but I see you like you're like a massively creative person in an industry that is like not labeled as creative, right? It's like tax and finance. But to run these companies, I think you can disagree, but I think it takes loads of creativity to juggle all the different aspects. And so with the actual juggling teaching, it's like you got to have the foundations and the catch comes or not.
Right.
But you got to master the throw.
The way I see that immediately in my mind is you can't catch. So juggling is comprised of, I guess, throwing and catching. Just throwing it up and catching it. You'll never be able to catch if you're not able to throw. Like that thing that completes the cycle will never happen unless you perfect this first thing, this first basic thing first.
What comes to mind for you as the CEO of a couple companies? Like what are the throwing elements of starting and running a business?
Now, you're asking me this question now.
Do both.
Now that throwing is yourself, is being really good at yourself, knowing your strengths, understanding your weaknesses, being really, really good at asking for help for your weaknesses, being very, very good to press into those strengths, learning to control and manage emotions, expectations, being a really excellent communicator, all the things that comprise yourself, I would say, is the throwing of juggling. You can't run a business. You can't run a household. You can't run any of this stuff unless you're really good at yourself. And myself, I have a lot of problems. I have a lot of baggage. I have a lot of misconceptions and wrong perceptions. Like my inherent bias of my life experience. A lot of it is wrong. I had no awareness of how much things up here were disorganized and just wrong. And so when you go into a marriage, a business, a lot of the times the focus becomes about the catching.
Outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're all screwed up because we're not, that foundation, that throwing, not there. We haven't worked on it. We haven't developed it at all. That would be the advice to the younger people listening. It's whatever you think you know, you don't. Just trust me. You don't. You don't. I'm saying it. You're saying it. Everyone is very, very vocal the older you get about how little we know. Yeah. And how everyone is very, very vocal about how little we know once we get to a certain age. And how the experience has shaped the depth and the perception of what we know and should have known.
Sure.
And so my advice to the young people is you don't know, and that's okay. I am saying, I thought I knew, and I was so wrong. You're saying it too, aren't you?
Yep.
And that would be the foundation, is know yourself better. Really understand yourself better. Understand what mental leashes you have and why you have them. What in your home of origin was done incorrectly. I know in mine there was dozens of things done wrong.
Sure.
Now,
yeah.
Not at 18, 19, 25, 30. But I took all those misconceptions into lives, companies, relationships. And I had to unpack that stuff. I'm still learning now, but how much further could it have been? We'll never know.
Yeah.
And the goal of this is not to lament the lost time,
sure.
right? We talk about how much better it's about to get because of all the stuff we know now that we didn't know then. And in an age of information, there's so much information, really, really push back on these concepts and these notions that you think you have. That would be my advice to my younger self, to the younger crowd, to the younger listeners. And my advice now and people in the midlife path like us is it's okay if you're hitting a roadblock. Let's just try to deconstruct that wall real quick and figure out why. Yeah. And it's definitely going to take time. It's going to take time. You have to be patient with yourself because all the stuff that you learned over 40 years, you're not going to unlearn overnight.
Sure.
Especially if it's been destructive.
Yeah.
And so to complete the circle with your juggling analogy, we become so focused on catching when we have all these leashes and all these weights held down on the throwing part. So we're throwing incorrectly. We're not catching. All of it's a mess.
Yeah, that's beautiful how you put that. I had this mental image as you were talking of the change on the throwing hand makes the throw poor, which makes the catching more difficult. But if we don't kind of address the throwing or mental chains and we keep throwing, then it just gets messier and messier.
And harder to catch.
It's harder to catch.
And now, again, to use the analogy of a juggler who you're saying when they teach people, they're saying focus on the throwing first.
Yeah.
The catching will come. Well, now you're trying to catch bad balls.
Right.
Incorrectly thrown, awkwardly thrown, ill-timed thrown.
Yeah.
And nothing works.
James Hollis, he's a psychologist. He said the first half of life is one giant mistake. I would add to that, it remains a mistake if you don't learn from it.
Yeah, man, if I can grab some of these kids by the collar and be like, just trust me, man. Just trust me. Just trust me. Because speaking to my younger self, man, I was a cocky. I was just like, I knew everything. I would have just said back then I was really confident, but now looking at myself, I'm like, no. You thought you had it all figured out, and you were largely wrong.
Is it possible to be confident and humble?
Yeah. I was not humble at all. Zero humility. And I wasn't confident. I thought I knew it. And look, that's the journey of youth.
Yeah.
Until you learn that you don't.
Yeah.
And I don't suppose anything will ever fully replace experience.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to either. Like, there's nothing like being humbled.
It's a medicine, man.
It is. But you could still correct a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the beautiful part and the awesome part, and the part we don't talk enough about, is all this stuff happening on social media.
Yeah.
All the people saying like, hey, I tried this way. It didn't work.
Sure.
Hey, what you were doing, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I walked like that. I talked like that. Didn't work. Hurt a lot of relationships. Hurt me first and foremost. Here and up here. You got to change it now. It'll be easier to change when you're 25. 35 gets a little harder. 45, it seems like you're up against an impenetrable wall.
Yeah.
Still possible. I see you smirking because you're like, yeah. I don't regret it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't. And that's why I say, like, there's only so much you can do. You don't want to replace too much with experience. But if we can redirect a lot of people, man, oh man.
At least plant the seed, right? I think at minimum, it's like just, hey, this is, we've traveled some more yards than you at this point. Here's what we've learned. That same
and been beat to crap along the way.
Yeah. That same psychologist who said the first half of life is a giant mistake. He's paraphrasing, but he gets parents like, hey, I want to prevent my kids from experiencing what I experienced,
Sure.
mistakes I made.
Sure.
Very common like position for parents. But his reply was like, it's a very well-intended position, but you would rob them from opportunities for growth if you shielded them from every mistake they can make.
Sure.
So it's like, you got to find that
Balance.
Goldilocks sweet spot as a parent. But I think I don't have a concrete view on that, but I think there is some wisdom in, like, for me as the parent, of being able to hold a loving position if or when they do make mistakes.
Yes. I agree wholeheartedly. And I think we're just learning how to do that better.
Yeah.
But that's why I've basically rationalized the kids are going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
18, 19, 25-year-olds, hey, yeah, you know everything. Have fun. I'll see you back when you're 40. And that's why I love this so much, because people at our station of life, like, they've realized something's wrong.
Yeah.
And they just don't know how to articulate it.
Yeah.
It's still very taboo. But that's where we come in, and we're able to be like, no, what you're going through is totally normal.
Yeah.
This fallacy that they sold you about the perfect life, the perfect wife, the perfect marriage, and the perfect job, just making money and going on vacations and showing Instagram and Snapchat Ferrari rides,
Yeah.
doesn't exist. It's not even a unicorn. There's this guy. Oh my God, I love this guy. I want to show it.
Yeah.
Can we make sure it's in the? Yeah. I just want to show it here.
Yeah, so before I lose this thought,
I think you're, yeah.
just being totally, this came to me, but just being super open. I have a pretty good relationship with my parents, particularly my mom. I open up about her, and I was like, yeah, last 18 months, 12 months have probably been the hardest. It was the hardest year of my life up until this point. And she took it as like I was walking around with my head cut off. Like she was so caught off guard. Like, why? Like you have these kids, your wife, you have your properties, and I didn't know where to go with that. She doesn't know everything, but I'm like, dude, so
It's like she was watching this video.
yes, and like the edit in my head was just saying like, if you actually knew,
You only knew. Yeah.
so this is purely selfish at this point because I just need to say it. So last 18 months, I walked in, had a drive-by shooting 10 feet from my kid's window. They almost got shot.
Hey, are you okay?
I know. I think talking about it helps.
I'm so sorry.
Come back to California. Marriage blew up. 3 months later, lost $500K in an investment deal. Figuring out professional life transitioning. And so all those things happened within like a 16-month, 12-month window. And so when like people say like, you got it all, I'm like, I actually do. I have all of the beautiful and I have all of the hard things. And so, yeah, that really resonates with me of like what the public persona or what people see on the outside and like the in the trenches stuff. And I will say like I'm proud of how I've taken it. I'm still working through stuff. There's still stuff there's still open wounds. But overall, like, I think I've done my best in light of everything.
Yeah. You know I mean it.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
And you're going through a lot.
Mm.
And you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I can't even wrap my head around.
Yeah.
I thought I knew.
Yeah. There's a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a lot, man. It's not a little bit more. And oh yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I just kind of needed to voice it because that video kind of triggered the like.
If you only knew.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to like what we talked about last episode of whether it's professional or colleague, like this. I know we're doing this under a brand, and hopefully these conversations kind of fan out and people will listen and get something out of it. But on a personal level, it's been almost like a refuge for me to like connect with you on certain things that in different arenas is like, that's off limits. And that's fine. I understand that. But here it's like, man, we can like unpack a little bit and feel okay to do so. So thank you.
I think we know that, again, even people who are close to us, they see, they just see the good in it. I think a large part of that is because they're going through their own bad.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, but there's no such thing as a perfect life or a perfect marriage or or a perfect business. There's a lot of layers of grief and pain. Can I also just say something else to you?
Yeah.
And everything that you mentioned, none of it's your fault. I hope you know that.
Yeah, there's particularly with my son's thing, I've definitely battled I could have
Hey,
shielded him,
no,
But I know that's not reality. It's
no.
just
Uh,
the thought that comes
we
through.
do the best that we can,
Yeah.
and there's nothing you can always do around the clock
Yeah.
to alter or change evil people's actions. So, it's not your fault. And
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to drop the bomb, but
I can't possibly thank you or love you more from my heart for being so vulnerable and trusting me with that. Trusting this. I believe you're going to change someone's life. Someone out there is going through the same, if not worse.
it's
And their world is crashing.
yeah. I think I don't want to over dramatize it, but in a mystical or divine way, like there's the whisper that's constantly kind of either in the background or forefront of my mind of like, all of this is going to be used somehow. Particularly with my choice of like changing my professional path of getting into psychology and men's health particularly. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do have this like really deep conviction that I'm going to be one of the best in helping I think men with their mental health. And I don't have solutions or answer why these things happen, but perhaps it's a training ground.
What answer would placate you?
I've moved on from that, I think, from like the why question we talked about last time.
Yeah.
And it's more like these are the cards and I'm going to play them.
I think there's please don't take this as cliche. Romans 8:28, and we know that God works all things
for good,
for the good of those who love Him. All things, not just good things, and not just bad things, horrific things. There's something bigger.
There's a poem, I'm paraphrasing, but like, don't shy away from the chance to let God fold within you. And somehow, some way, I'm like sitting in that season of like, yeah, this stuff has happened. It's been hard. But I won't like let myself shy away from God unfolding within and in my life. So Romans 8:28 is definitely hits.
I mean, we didn't plan this, but you're in the arena. We are in the arena. Don't give up. Yeah. It's never over if you don't give up.
Yeah, it's an infinite game, man. This at this level, infinite game. Thank you.
I love you.
Love you too.